When the monks of northern Britain wrote in their journals that the sea vomited forth the dragon-proud ships, they were not trying to be poetic. They were trying to describe something they had never seen before: silent vessels cutting through the dawn light, carrying strangers who did not speak their language, follow their ways, or fear their God. Europe had faced invasions before, but nothing prepared it for these tall, broad-shouldered sailors who arrived with no warning, vanished with no trace, and returned again and again. This was the beginning of the Viking Age, a period that would reshape Europe more deeply than most people realize. What started as fast coastal raids soon turned into settlements, kingdoms, trade networks, and cultural transformations that touched nearly every corner of the continent. To understand how Europe became what it is today, one must understand the people who arrived in longships from the frozen north. Section 1: Why the Vikings set out. The Viking Age did not begin with a single event. It emerged from a combination of pressures and opportunities inside Scandinavia. The lands of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden were rugged, with short growing seasons and limited farmland. Families often lived in tight-knit communities built around local chieftains, and inheritance customs meant that land was divided among sons until the pieces were too small to support a household. Younger men, especially those who inherited nothing, looked beyond the mountains and fjords for possibilities. They heard stories from traders about distant coasts with richer soil, weaker defenses, and opportunities for wealth. These stories moved quickly through communities where ambition, hunger, and curiosity mixed together. At the same time, advances in shipbuilding made long-distance travel more realistic. Scandinavian shipwrights developed long, narrow vessels that could move fast on open sea and also travel up rivers. These ships did not need deep harbors. They could land almost anywhere, giving their crews the ability to appear where no enemy expected them. Population growth also played a role. Between the 7th and 9th centuries, Scandinavian communities expanded, increasing competition for resources. Some people left simply because they could not continue living as their ancestors had. Others left because they wanted to test their strength, gain wealth, or win honor in their communities. Whatever the reasons, once a few ships pushed outward, more followed. Curiosity created momentum, and momentum created a cycle. Each successful raid or trading journey encouraged the next one. And so the Viking Age began, quietly at first, with small groups exploring, learning, and mapping the world beyond the northern seas. Section 2: The First Major Shock, Lindisfarne. The attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793 CE is often described as the official start of the Viking Age. Lindisfarne was a remote island off the coast of northern England. It was peaceful, religious, and unprepared. When the longships landed, the monks had no experience with violent coastal attacks, and they had little means to protect themselves. The raiders moved quickly through the monastery, taking whatever valuables they could carry. Gold, silver, decorated manuscripts, tools, and clothing were all loaded onto the ships. The news of the attack spread through the Christian world not because of the violence, but because of the shock. This was not a war between kingdoms or a conflict between known rivals. It was something different, an attack from outsiders who appeared without warning and left before anyone could respond. European leaders reacted with confusion. Some believed this was divine punishment. Others thought it was a temporary disturbance. Only a few understood that this was the beginning of a new pattern. The Vikings had discovered something valuable. Europe was full of lightly defended coasts, monasteries, and settlements that held wealth but lacked strong protection. After Lindisfarne, similar raids began to appear along the coastlines of Britain, Ireland, and the Frankish territories. The raiding parties remained small at first, but they learned quickly. They mapped river routes, noted which areas were wealthy, and discovered that European kingdoms were too divided to coordinate a strong defense. Monasteries became frequent targets because they held gold and silver offerings. Kings responded by fortifying some areas, but Europe was fragmented, with many small rulers acting independently. The Vikings took advantage of this fragmentation, moving between territories faster than news could spread. also shaped their worldview. The Norse gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, and others, were not distant figures but forces tied to daily life, decision-making, and the natural world. The lack of a strict priestly hierarchy meant communities practiced rituals differently, but the core beliefs were similar. Fate was powerful, courage mattered, and death in battle could bring honor. Because life was difficult and uncertain, exploration was a rational choice. Sailing into the unknown was not seen as reckless. It was seen as a way to improve one's fortune. While outsiders viewed the Vikings as unpredictable invaders, those within Scandinavia saw their voyages as part of a broader strategy of survival and opportunity. Section 4. From Raiders to Settlers. As the 9th century progressed, Viking activity evolved. The early attacks were simple hit-and-run raids. Ships would land, seize goods, and leave before defenders arrived. But over time, some groups began staying for longer periods. They built temporary camps on islands or near river mouths. They also began wintering in foreign lands instead of returning home. These camps grew into permanent settlements. Viking groups saw that many regions of Europe had fertile farmland, trade possibilities, and political struggles they could take advantage of. When local rulers fought among themselves, Vikings often offered military support in exchange for land or payments. Sometimes they fought on their own behalf, carving out territories where they could rule. Ireland, for example, became home to several Viking-founded towns such as Dublin, Waterford, and Limerick. These towns became active trading centers connecting Scandinavia, Britain, and continental Europe. In England, Viking armies began taking territory in the north and east, forming what later became known as the Danelaw. This was not a single kingdom, but a collection of areas where Viking laws, customs, and leadership took root. As settlements grew, the nature of Viking influence shifted. Instead of being seen only as raiders, they became neighbors, traders, and in some regions, rulers. Their language blended with local languages. Their farming techniques adapted to new lands. Their craftsmen and traders introduced new materials and designs. This phase marked a turning point. It showed that the Viking Age was not only about violence and violence, it was also about migration, adaptation, and cultural exchange. Europe was beginning to change in ways that would last for centuries. By the middle of the 9th century, Viking activity moved the change from small raiding bands to something far larger and more organized. In 865 CE, a force known in later records as the Great Heathen Army landed on the eastern coast. Unlike earlier wars, this was not a temporary expedition. It included families, supplies, and leaders who intended to stay. They moved with deliberate strategy, not chaos. Instead of striking isolated monasteries, they targeted towns, fortresses, and important political centers. Their goal was not only wealth but also territory. They negotiated when it benefited them and fought when it did not. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were divided at the time, and this fragmentation made resistance difficult. Northumbria fell into crisis, with rival kings fighting each other even as the Vikings advanced. The Great Heathen Army exploited this instability, capturing key towns and establishing control in the region. Once they secured the north, the army moved southward, challenging other kingdoms. Some areas paid tribute to avoid destruction, a practice known as Danegeld, a payment made in exchange for peace. The Vikings accepted these payments when useful, but they often returned later when circumstances changed. Over several years, the Great Heathen Army reshaped the political map of England. Their presence forced Anglo-Saxon rulers to reconsider their alliances, their defenses, and their understanding of the threat they faced. The Vikings were no longer outsiders appearing sporadically. They had become a sustained military and political force on English soil. This transformation laid the foundation for the creation of the Danelaw, where Viking influence became rooted in daily life, law, and governance. The Danelaw and daily life under Viking rule. The Danelaw was not a unified state. Instead, it was a region where Scandinavian customs mixed with Anglo-Saxon ones. Laws regarding property, inheritance, and community responsibilities followed patterns familiar to Viking settlers. Settlements expanded around agricultural land, trading posts, and river routes. Many towns adopted Scandinavian place names, especially those ending in by, meaning farm or settlement, thorp, secondary settlement, and thwaite, clearing. These names remain today, a quiet reminder of the period when Viking influence was strong. Local populations adjusted to the new rulers. Many found that the Vikings brought not only challenges but also opportunities. Trade expanded because Viking networks connected England to Scandinavia, Ireland, and continental Europe. Markets grew in size, and new goods, such as furs, glass beads, and weapons, appeared more frequently. Over time, the cultures blended. Marriages between settlers and locals became common. Children grew up speaking both languages. Craftsmen combined Scandinavian designs with Anglo-Saxon techniques. The result was not the domination of one culture over another, but a gradual merger that changed the identity of the region. Meanwhile, in the broader political landscape, the presence of the Daimler forced the remaining Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to strengthen their defenses and develop new systems of cooperation. This would later play an important role in the rise of the unified English kingdom. Vikings in Ireland, town builders and traders. Ireland experienced Viking influence differently than Europe. Instead of conquering large territories, the Vikings established towns along the coast and rivers. These towns became trading hubs that connected Ireland to international markets. Dublin, founded by Vikings around 841 CE, grew into a major economic center. It served as a base for trade, craftsmanship, and travel across the Irish Sea. Similar towns developed in Waterford, Wexford, and Limerick. Irish kingdoms were numerous and often rivaled each other. The Vikings engaged in these rivalries, sometimes offering military support in exchange for payments or alliances. This involvement brought them deeper into Irish political life, although they never established a large unified territory as they did in England. The towns they built became permanent parts of Irish society. Over time, Viking settlers and Irish communities blended culturally and economically. Many Irish kings adopted aspects of Viking trade and maritime practices, strengthening their own positions. By the 10th century, some Viking families in Ireland had become fully integrated into local politics, even ruling as kings in mixed Norse-Gaelic dynasties. Their influence remained strong long after the initial period of raids had ended. Expansion into the west, Iceland, Greenland, and beyond. While Viking armies pushed deeper into Europe, other groups looked westward across the North Atlantic. Their longships, built to withstand harsh conditions, allowed them to reach areas far beyond the usual trade routes. Around 870 CE, Norse settlers began moving to Iceland, drawn by stories of fertile land and natural resources. The island had no native population, making settlement straightforward. Communities formed rapidly, each led by local chieftains who governed through assemblies known as things. Iceland soon developed a system of governance that combined Norse traditions with the realities of life in a new environment. From Iceland, some families continued even farther. Near the end of the 10th century, Eric the Red led settlers to Greenland, despite its harsh climate and limited resources. They built farms in small communities, relying on trading and hunting to survive. Even more remarkable was the voyage to North America. Around 1000 CE, Norse explorer Leif Erikson landed on the shores of a place later called Vinland. Archaeological evidence of Mont Saint-Ux meadows in Newfoundland confirms the presence of Norse settlers, though their stay appears to have been brief. Conflicts with local populations and the difficulty of maintaining supply lines likely led to their departure. centers became the foundation of what later historians refer to as the Kievan Rus, a political entity that blended Scandinavian leadership with Slavic culture. Kievan Rus grew strong enough to negotiate treaties with the Byzantine Empire. Some Varangians even served as elite guards for the Byzantine emperors, forming the Varangian Guard, a unit known for its loyalty and toughness. Although the Rus gradually adopted Slavic language and Eastern Christian traditions, the early influence of Scandinavian leaders played a significant role in shaping the region's development. Over the centuries, the descendants of these communities formed states that would later become Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. By the late 9th century, European kingdoms were no longer caught completely off guard by Viking attacks. After decades of raids, they began adapting their defenses. Some rulers strengthened coastal fortifications, others formed alliances, and many reorganized their armies to respond more quickly. In England, the most notable figure in this process was King Alfred of Wessex. He recognized that his kingdom could not survive repeated attacks without structural changes. Under his leadership, a network of fortified towns called bells was constructed across Wessex. These bells acted as defense centers, trading hubs, and rallying points for local forces. Alfred also developed a system of military rotation, ensuring that part of his army was always ready while the rest handled farming and other responsibilities. This approach reduced the chance of being caught unprepared. Over time, these reforms strengthened Wessex and allowed it to withstand large Viking armies that would have overwhelmed earlier rulers. Other regions followed similar strategies. In the Frankish territories, rulers fortified river towns and built bridges that prevented longships from easily traveling upriver. These measures did not stop all raids, but they made them more difficult and less profitable. As European defenses improved, the nature of Viking activity shifted again. Large-scale raiding became risky, so many groups chose to settle, trade, or integrate with local communities instead. The Viking Age was still underway, but it was beginning to change shape. The rise of a unified England. The changes in England during this period were significant. The resistance led by Alfred did not end Viking presence, but it halted their expansion and created the foundation for a new political landscape. After Alfred's death, his successors, especially Edward the Elder and Aethelstan, continued strengthening the kingdom. Gradually, the areas under Viking influence were brought under Anglo-Saxon control. The Danelaw did not disappear in England, but its political power weakened as English rulers consolidated authority. The blending of Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian communities continued, influencing language, law, and customs. By the 10th century, England was moving toward unification, one would have happened without the early Viking incursions. The pressure from outside forces pushed the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to cooperate and reorganize. In this sense, the Viking presence indirectly contributed to the formation of a unified English state. This process took decades, marked by periods of peace and renewed conflict. But the long-term outcome was clear: the political map of England had been permanently reshaped. Normandy, a Viking duchy in the heart of France. While England built defenses, the Frankish kingdom adopted a different approach. In 911 CE, the Frankish king Charles the Simple made an agreement with a Viking leader named Rollo. Instead of fighting endlessly, the king granted Rollo and his followers land along the lower Seine River. In return, Rollo agreed to stop raiding, defend the region from other groups, and convert to Christianity. This territory became Normandy, named after the Northmen who settled there. Normandy grew into a powerful duchy. The descendants of Rollo adopted the French language, intermarried with local families, and developed administrative systems similar to those of the surrounding region. However, they retained certain Scandinavian traits, particularly a strong military tradition and flexible political leadership. By the 11th century, the Normans became influential across Europe. Norman knights traveled as mercenaries, administrators, and settlers. Their most significant achievement came in 1066, when William, Duke of Normandy, invaded England and became king after the Battle of Hastings. This event connected the history of Scandinavia, France, and England in a way that shaped shaped political, cultural, and linguistic developments for centuries. The fact that a Viking-descended ruler eventually conquered England is one of the most lasting legacies of the Viking Age. The Christianization of Scandinavia. While Vikings settled abroad, Scandinavia itself was undergoing major internal change. For centuries, Norse communities practiced their own religious traditions. There was no central religious authority, but shared beliefs connected different regions. However, as contact with Christian rule increased, pressure to convert grew. Some conversions occurred through personal decisions or political advantage. Others happened through the influence of missionaries and European rulers. Over time, kings in Norway, Denmark, and Sweden began adopting Christianity as a unifying force for their growing states. The process was not sudden. Old beliefs remained strong, and many communities were slow to abandon their traditions. But the gradual spread of Christianity had important effects. It created stronger ties with European neighbors. It supported the formation of centralized kingdoms. It reduced internal conflicts linked to clan-based religious practices. It encouraged written records in Latin and later in local languages. By the 11th century, most of Scandinavia had been Christianized, although older customs continued to survive in rural areas for generations. The shift in religion marked a turning point. With Christian kings establishing authority and new administrative systems forming, the social structures that had fewer Viking expeditions began to change. The values that drove young men to seek wealth and honor abroad were replaced gradually by systems that rewarded loyalty to regional rulers and participation in growing national states. The decline of raiding and the changing role of the nation. As Europe strengthened its defenses and Scandinavia developed more centralized governments, raiding became less practical. Longships remained important, but their role shifted from aggressive expeditions to trade, exploration, and regional travel. Several factors contributed to the decline of Viking raids. 1. Improved European defenses reduced opportunities for easy attacks. 2. Christianization and state formation changed social priorities in Scandinavia. 3. Settlements abroad provided new sources of stability and reduced the need for unstable raiding incomes. 4. Economic shifts encouraged trade over plunder. 5. Generational change meant children of settlers grew up integrated into local cultures. By the early 11th century, large-scale Viking raids had become rare. Individual expeditions still occurred, and Scandinavian rulers remained militarily active, but the era characterized by sudden coastal attacks was fading. The Viking Age did not end because of a single event. It ended because the world that created it gradually disappeared. Kings, consolidation, and the end of the age. The final phase of the Viking Age saw the emergence of strong Scandinavian monarchies. Leaders like Harald Bluetooth in Denmark, Olaf Tryggvason in Norway, and Olaf Skotkonung in Sweden created more centralized systems of rule. Their successors expanded these systems, developing laws, taxation, and Christian institutions that tied communities together in new ways. In 1066, the Battle of Stamford Bridge in England marked a symbolic turning point. The Norwegian king Harald Hardrada attempted to claim the English throne but was defeated by King Harald Godwinson. Later the same year, William of Normandy, himself a descendant of Vikings, invaded successfully. After this period, Scandinavian military activity continued, but the age of widespread raiding and long-distance expeditions had ended. The societies that once produced independent raiding groups were now organized into stable kingdoms with different priorities. The Viking Age had come to a close, but its impact remained visible across Europe. As the new kingdoms formed and stabilized across Europe, the Viking world was also changing from the inside. The old culture that once depended on raiding was slowly replaced by farming, trade, and diplomacy. By the late 10th century, the younger generation of Scandinavians grew up hearing stories of raiding as something from their fathers and grandfathers' time, not their own. One of the reasons behind this shift is simple: the world outside Scandinavia had grown stronger. Kingdoms like England and Francia were no longer scattered territories with weak defenses. They had armies, replaced the old customs. This change did not erase Viking culture, but it softened it. Warrior identity slowly became farmer identity again. Families who once relied on sailing abroad now focused on building stable settlements at home. As this transformation continued, the Viking Age approached its final moments. The last major military event involving Vikings was the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. It was led by Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, often considered the last great Viking warrior king. He launched one final ambitious invasion of England, hoping to claim the throne. His army was strong, experienced, and confident. They believed they would succeed, just as earlier Vikings had done for centuries. But England had changed by this time. It was no longer a land vulnerable to sudden attacks. It was a kingdom with strong rulers, trained soldiers, and organized defenses. When Harald Hardrada reached Stamford Bridge, his forces were surprised by the speed of the English counterattack. The battle was long and violent, but in the end, Harald was killed. His death marked more than the end of the campaign. To many historians, it symbolized the end of the Viking Age itself. The world that had once feared Viking sails now saw them as something from a different era. But the story does not end with their decline. If anything, the Viking legacy was only beginning to take full shape. They transformed Europe in ways that lasted far beyond their own time. They connected distant cultures and expanded trade routes, some stretching from Iceland to the Middle East. They founded cities, shaped kingdoms, influenced languages, and left behind a genetic and cultural imprint still visible today. Even the English language carries traces of Old Norse. Simple everyday words like sky, egg, bread, hill, take, and give came from Vikings living and settling in England. In Ireland, Iceland, and Britain, Viking place names remain everywhere. Names ending in by, Thorpe, and Thwaite came from Norse settlers, marking where they built their homes. In Eastern Europe, the early foundations of Russia and Ukraine carried Norse influence from the Varangian traders and warriors. And beyond that, the Viking spirit of exploration continued to inspire many cultures long after the Viking Age itself ended. Even today, the Viking story remains one of the most widely told chapters of European history. Not because they were unstoppable raiders, but because they changed the world in ways that neither they nor their enemies fully understood at the time. Their journeys opened Europe, reshaped borders, merged cultures, and created new societies. The Viking Age may have lasted only a few centuries, but its effects lasted 1,000 years and more. In every corner of Europe touched by their ships, their settlements, and their traditions, a part of the Viking world still lives quietly beneath the surface.